Welcome back to Silver State Garage. Today we're going to be replacing a front hub bearing on a 2004 Nissan Titan 4-wheel drive. For this you'll just need some basic hand tools, everything listed right here. Hopefully these are things that you already have, you don't have to go out and buy anything special. And of course, don't forget the beer.
So the first thing I did a couple days ago was I sprayed the axle nut here with PB Blaster, and then the 3 hub bolts. There's, where's my finger? One there, one down here, and one on the other side. And the heads of them, let's see if I can get the camera back there. You can kind of see the one down there. Get both sides, as well as the axle nut. After you let that soak for a day or two, take the tire off and then the brake caliper right here. And these are two 21mm bolts. You got one here and one here. When you get done with that, tie it up. You can use a bungee, zip ties, baling wire, something like that. Just tie it up so it's not hanging from the brake line.
I realized as I was putting this video together that I sound like I contradicted myself a little bit. So really what I did is I took the tire off first and the brake caliper, so I didn't get the PB Blaster all over the inside of my wheel, brake caliper, all that other stuff. So I took all that off first, then I sprayed everything, and then once I got all that done, then I put the tire back on so I could set the truck down to take off the axle nut. Just hope there's no confusion there.
Once you get your cotter pin out, make sure you keep this right here. The easiest way to break the axle nut, at least for me, is to have the tire on, weight on the ground, and then put your socket and breaker bar on there. This is 1.25 inches. You might have to use a longer breaker bar depending on how tight this thing actually is. Once you break it loose, just go ahead and snug it back up. It's not time to remove this just yet. With the axle nut broken loose and the truck back in the air, go ahead and take your tire off. So these hub bolts here are going to be a little tricky to get to. Just make sure that if you're doing the back two, like I am here, that the knuckle is turned inboard. It just opens this side up. So when you go to do the front one, let's see if I get my camera to focus here. Sorry. You go to do the front one over here on the back side of all this. Turn it the other way like this so it's facing outboard. Just opens up the access so you can actually get the tool in there. I will show you exactly what I mean here. You go like right there, you can see the socket right there rides the edge of the shaft. Can't really get the socket to fully seat down there on the nut. It's even more difficult up here on the top. I know my camera skills are shitty here, sorry. Anyway, so you just find a way to get in there and try to get it on the bolts as best as you can. Like I said, it doesn't seat all the way, and apparently I can't get it on now because I'm filming. But anyway, you guys get the idea. Get it on there as best as you can, and then just take them out. Once you get this started, it's easier to finish it with the wrench than it is the ratchet. The socket just, it's too much of a tight fit, so you'll have a lot better luck if you just finish it off with the wrench here. It's more of the same here for the top one. I have even less room to get a wrench in there, so I guess you gotta get a little creative. I suppose depending on your socket set, it may be a little bit slimmer and you might have a better chance. I'm going to take the opportunity now. This here is the ABS sensor wire. So if you're replacing it completely, this is going to be in the way. So just make sure you take it out first. And this right here is a 3/16 Allen wrench. Though it doesn't fit perfectly in there, so I'm sure it's metric, but I don't have any metric Allens, so I'm not sure of the exact size. Just take this off, pull the sensor out, and like I said, if you're replacing it all together like I am, you can just let it hang. Don't really have to worry about protecting it. A bit more of the same here on the front one. Have it facing outboard. It opens everything up here so you can get to it a little bit better. Here I had to tap the end of the breaker bar with a mallet to drive the socket onto the head. There's just really no other way to get it on there. Now we'll spin off the axle nut. Now the easiest way to take this off is probably just to rent a tool. It goes on here and you tighten it down and it pulls this off. I'm lazy and don't feel like going to the parts store, so I got to figure this out on my own. So basically, you can hit back here, anywhere back here on the back face, with a mallet. Normally I wouldn't advise doing that with a unit bearing like this, but since we're throwing it away, not really that big of a deal. There's a lot of shit all built up in here. Road grime and rust and salt and all kinds of nasty stuff, and plus all the heat, it kind of bonds these a little bit. So just try to pound it off. You can use a pry bar to help pop it off. You can try to very gently drive one in between here. You can hit it vertically like this to try to break that. And be careful. Don't pound it too hard. You don't want to damage the axle shaft. You don't want to damage the knuckle. Just try to break this loose. Once it's loose, it'll just pop right out. It's a little hard to show these steps by myself without a tripod or anything, but basically what I just did, I use my sledge here and I hit the back of this. Oh, well, how about that? The top of the hub there. So let me flip this thing around and I'll show you. So basically the back side of this, when it was about right here, so this way. And then up top, straight down. And over the course of a few whacks, there ended up being some separation here between the surface and the hub. Just make sure that you don't start pounding out the hub and the shaft wants to come with it. Make sure that it's trying to slide on the splines there, and just kind of push with your thumb to hold it there. It'll be fine. You can see the grease there on the splines. Let's see if I can get the camera to show it. I don't know if it will. Hopefully it comes out on camera, but there's a bunch of nasty grease in there. Just smells like old hot wheel bearing grease, which is basically what it is. Yeah, this bearing's pretty fuckered, no doubt. This is going to be really hard to get on camera, so I'll just have to talk about it. So at this point, you want to get all the crap off your shaft, excuse me, in the inside of the bore here, so you can use acetone, WD-40, anything like that to help assist breaking it up. I would highly recommend using a wire wheel, whether it be on a drill or an angle grinder, either way. And of course, when that's all done, wipe it all away with brake clean, acetone, something like that. You just want a nice, shiny, clean surface. Okay, that's all cleaned up, ready to go. Now the next thing I'm going to do is come up here by the control arm and get that out of here. That's the ABS sensor wire. We still got to take that out, so I'm going to do that now. All right, now you put on some anti-seize, so make sure you get it inside the bore there and on the splines of the axle shaft. You don't have to put it here. This surface right there is the mounting surface for the backing plate. Just tends to make it a little bit easier later on down the road if you do have to take it apart. Hopefully you don't, but if you do, it'll make it easier. Also note that do not put any anti-seize in these holes or on the bolts at all. Some instructions will tell you to, depending on what you're doing. In this case, don't do that. It lubricates the bolt, which I guess is fine for all intents and purposes, but when you go to torque it down, there's less resistance. So it can mess up how tight the bolt actually is. So I found in terms of reassembly, it's a little bit easier if you take the axle nut here and thread it on. See, it's not tight by any means, but it bottoms out. And it helps push it down into the bore here. It pulls it in, otherwise it just wants to fall out. So this will allow you to, can't really get it to move much here, but this will basically allow you to spin the hub a little bit, get these holes lined up with the spindle here so you can start your bolts. Now I don't really feel it's necessary to show every step here of reassembly, but when you get these started, you're going to need to start them with your wrench. It's basically opposite of removal. So you don't have to start with these two back here like I'm doing. You can start with the front one. Just make sure that you go backwards of how you took everything out. So make sure your steering wheel's turned, so you open up the side that you're putting the bolts in. Start them with the wrench, and then you can switch to the ratchet to snug them down. Don't do them all. Don't tighten them all at one time. Just baby steps. Just snug them up and go to the other side, and just kind of move back and forth like you would with your lug nuts. And once you're done with that, then you can torque everything down. Now, after you get those 3 bolts torqued, go ahead and secure your ABS sensor wire. It goes right there. And up here is where it attaches. On the back side of this, there's a clip that goes into the frame there, so attach it here as well, and zip tie accordingly. I did right there and right here. Now you can put your rotor and caliper back on. Caliper bolts are 21 millimeter, and torque spec is 32 foot-pounds. Now, it has been my experience so far that you can have some brake pad drag once you get all this put back together. So basically all you really have to do at that point is just take your caliper back off, push the piston back in like you're doing a brake job, and put it all back together. So it may not be a bad idea to do it now, just in case. I did, since I don't want to have to take it apart and fix it. It's really easy to do. I just use this truck uses 2 piston calipers. I just used a couple of these cheapo Harbor Freight C-clamps. I didn't have much of an issue, so push the piston back down a little bit, put the caliper back together, throw it back on, you'd be good to go. Now you put your tire back on, set the vehicle back down, torque your axle nut. I'll leave the torque specs a little bit later in this video, so you can pause it and write it down if you need to. Once you get the axle nut back on, put this little collar back on, put a new cotter pin in, torque your lugs, and that's it.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Cheers.